But these students have chose to be at Shilpi Theatre, so they have already taken a big step in their life.
Mm-hmm. And I hear that chocolates are all a big part of Hygge as well.
Maybe more biscuits. Keeping an eye at each other, I know where you were last night. I know what you did. Right? Have you told anybody? Do you know the story of Hamlet? And she kind of said, no, I haven't read it recently, and she was 10 years old.
In some of the theatres in England, they have 2 seats that are reserved just so that the ghosts can watch. Mm-hmm. I thought that it was out of proportions.
We have Shilpi Theatre that have been created by upped. Denmark should be proud. They should invest more money in students that could come and have the education and travel back and be great theatre creators.
In today's podcast, we've got Ruth. She is the director of Commedia School in Denmark.
I heard that there's a phrase in Denmark where people say that it's only the children and the drunkards who tell the truth. I was hoping that we could not become children and drunkards and still tell a few truths about the theatre business, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The sounds. Let's throw us up at it. I don't know. Let's be drunk in coffee.
Yeah. Talking about coffee, I read this book about a Danish word that's known as Higge. I don't know, Hygge. Is this a really popular term?
Hygge.
Hygge. Oh, that's how it's pronounced.
Hygge.
So they said that you've got Hygge coffee, you've got Hygge chocolate.
Hygge. Hygge, it's just some kind of way of being cozy, where you go inside, it's cold outside. It can also be that, and you just tuck in the sofa and you sit with a cup of coffee. Maybe you have a biscuit. Maybe you light a candle, and then you just feel cozy.
Yeah.
Now we call it Hygge.
Yeah, Hygge, the Danish way of happiness. I think there was a book titled that way.
Yeah, it's been a very, very famous thing going worldwide.
Yeah. And I also read that some socks can be Hygge socks, or some pajamas can be Hygge pajamas. So it's a more encompassing term.
Yeah, it's some comfort. I've got my comfort film, I've got my comfort cup, I've got comfort wear, I've got my comfort socks. When I wear this, I feel comfortable, I feel at home and at ease.
That's wonderful. And they also said that socializing is a great part of Hygge. If you can only be Hygge if you're around a certain number of people. I mean, you could be Hygge alone, but you have the social dimension to it as well.
I think there is some people that would say, I can also have a Hygge alone. But it's just feeling comfortable and cozy at home and letting go of everything and just but definitely it's something you do in the midst of family or friends.
And I hear that chocolates are all a big part of Hygge as well.
Maybe more biscuits.
Biscuits,
yeah. But we actually also say it to each other. If I've been to a meeting and I would say that I felt comfortable and I liked the way the meeting was conducted, I would say it was really Hyggelig.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a bit about the social cohesion that's amongst the Danish population. It's often said that you guys are a bit more into the social phenomenon, rather. Say, for example, an American tends to become a bit individualistic, but in Denmark, people tend to become a bit more social. Is this something that you've observed?
I think there's 2 parts of this. We're coming from a cold country, and when it's cold, you also withdraw. Like it's like when all the blood in your vein, everything is going to the center when you try to keep the warm, and we are a little bit the same as well. So when it's cold, like we also withdraw a little bit, even not trying to reach out for our next neighbor, because we just trying to cope. Actually, I the other day on the radio, I heard somebody was saying that the Scandinavians, oh yeah, because it's cold, and the Scandinavians, everybody is coming into the same room, trying to like cope, and you have to cope for several months in a very little place. Then you can't be social in the way that you would be outside. So we go a little bit inside, and we don't interfere with each other so much. We're just trying to like get through the winter without having a big discussion. So that's one part of it. But if you're comparing to a big country like America, we are a little country. So the feeling of our neighbor is part of our responsibility is much more there. So we are more inclined to share. We pay a larger tax. We pay nearly up to 50%. But you can see what it goes through. You know, it goes to roads and libraries and schools and hospitals. So, and we can it's not like you're paying to somebody that shoots so far away that America on the, it's even traveled time zones. So we still have a great feeling of being a little country. Yeah.
And is much of that, is much of the budget also spent on theatre? Is there a provision like that in the country?
Oh, of course, we spend much more than we do, that we probably do here in Nepal, without really knowing the percentage, neither in Denmark or in Nepal. So there is a state budget that would fund state theatre school and would fund the theatre, but we also feel as artists, as an art institution, we also feel like, couldn't we get just a little
little more
money for our hard work? We see that all the other branches is getting well paid, and we are working our butt out for no budget. And there's this artist, they can just do it. They can't help doing it, so why pay them? And there's the truth is that we can't help doing it, but why not pay us? Because everybody wants films, everybody wants music, everybody benefit. Yeah.
And when I first read, I didn't really think about it that much then. Hamlet is the Prince of Denmark, right?
Yes.
But if you take a look at our country, for example, children don't really know about plays. They don't really know about plays. They're never taught how to perform. There's not a big theatre culture in our country. I mean, children go to the movies, but not particularly to theatres, and they don't really know about theatre artists. I mean, if you go to Shilpi, for example, there'll be a lot of people who come in the theatre hoping that they'd become Bollywood stars or Hollywood stars, not really knowing that this is very, very different from what is generally perceived in the popular cinemas. So is there a tendency of children in Denmark to go observe plays?
Yeah, most kids will see at least one performance every year, either with their schools or with their clubs, or but films are taking so much more space, like football and film. They're just eating the leisure time.
Okay. And is Hamlet really popular in Denmark as well, or is it simply an English phenomenon?
No. We are very proud of Helsingør, and we're very proud of the castle and Hamlet, and we feel part of it. And the phrase "there's something rotten in Denmark" is something we also connect to very strongly. Yeah.
So one of the other things that connects Nepal and Denmark is a sense that both of us are kingdoms in some ways. We lost many members of our royal family in the Royal Massacre that took place, I don't know, about 2 decades or so ago. But until then, we were firmly in kingship. So how do Danish feel about the monarchy still existing? Because if you take a look at England, for example, there's a lot of furor about throw away the monarchy, they're dead and they're gone, the time is up. Is that something like that?
I think it's pretty much the same. There's two voices. Like if you're asking my grandmother, she adores the Queen, and she thinks she's doing such a great job, and she's showing the way in manners and also her heart for art. Because she loved ballet, so she have been doing scenography, and she also loved doing crochet and like producing with her hands. So she opens the world that way. So there is a huge part of Denmark that is very proud of our kingdom and our queen, and I actually think she's doing a good job, but it also collided with the thing that somebody is born to have so much money and so much power, and like not powers because it's the government that had the power, but and how much should we keep paying when they get divorced and have children with new wife and husbands, like it's a and then we'll say, but why should the ex-wife of the prince have all the money for the royal that the theatre could use? Like then we can get a little bit like and actually recently the Queen took away the appanage, that the yearly money for some of her grandchildren.
Okay.
And I think that was also part of renewing the view on the monarchy, and also try to persevere it into the future. But I think it's in our hearts, isn't it? Like in Nepal, you feel like you had a king, but you didn't have a king for so long. I went to the castle and I saw you only had 11 or something like that.
Yeah,
we have had kings like for.
Well, Nepal used to be divided into smaller kingdoms. The concept of a unified Nepal started only, I don't know, about 200 years or so ago. So there were small territories with their each own king. So if you go to some parts, such as Mustang, there is the ceremonial king of that kingdom is still there. So if you go to other Western districts, you would see people fawning over the descendants of former kings. Yeah. So since there were many number of kings rather than a great monarchy, I think that you might have only observed about 11 of them, and there was a royal massacre where most of the people died.
Yeah, I saw the gun holes in the wall, and there was 4 members, and apparently it was the prince.
Yeah,
it was his son that did it. But rumor says, and try to get to the bottom of these rumors.
We never know. Shakespeare was one of those people who, perhaps in Macbeth, showed how power can corrupt. So there are conspiracy theories that some of the relatives of the king, who later superseded him, might have killed him. These are just rumors that we don't really have official reports. Official reports say that it was the prince who did it. So that is the staple diet that the government has given us, and the Nepalese have chewed over it, and that is that. So I remember Hamlet, and there was a play that was conducted in Nepal. I don't know if Prem knows about it, but there was a play, Hamlet, based on the Royal Massacre. So it was molded in such a way to relate to the Royal Massacre. So in what ways is Hamlet adopted in your country, for example?
It has been adopted in thousands of ways. It is probably I think it's the the play that have been put on stage the most time ever all around the world. And I've seen several brilliant
renditions of
and I've also seen a lot of bad ones, and that says something about the amount of how much it is like being put on stage. And I have even made a play myself and actually with kids doing Hamlet.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do kids do Hamlet then? Because there's a dead father, and how does that transmute into kids?
We were working in a deprived neighborhood where a lot of kids they did have traumas with dads that was never there or was absent for one reason or the other. So this thing that the dad was dead, they could relate to that very much. And I think there's a lot of things that you can relate to in every society, because it's really universal. Also this thing about gossip, that the two families keeping an eye on each other, I know where you were last night. I know what you did, right? Have you told anybody? Do your mother know? So, and you probably also know that everybody's surveying everybody in a small society, in a small countryside here. So they could probably speak to also you to the Nepalese in a rural district or in the cities on a very profound level. And then it's just fun because playing like every actor want to die, it have a great death. And children also, oh my God, they enjoy dying. And this is, and this is also like everybody's dying. And so it also gave a big theatrical output. Yeah. And even one of the kids, she was like, and I said to her, do you know the story of Hamlet? And she kind of said, no, I haven't read it recently. And she was 10 years old. But she just tried to sound like she knew it, but then she knew it like cultural wise when she learned the sentence to be and not to be. Then she know it. She've heard it before. So she understand her culture, animation and Disney movies that also draw on the big stories from Hamlet. So now she suddenly understands some of her culture, like she's seen on TV, into a larger understanding.
And sometimes one of the things that I often think about is how Shakespeare might be translated into different languages, for instance, and how would that beauty be still preserved? For example, I think it's in King Lear, when Gloucester has been blinded, he comes to meet King Lear, and King Lear asks him, "How do you see the world, blind man?" He says, "I see it feelingly." And I think I sometimes try to translate how a word like "I see it feelingly" could translate into the Nepalese language, and I think this can't really be done.
I'm trying to teach my students that sentence every day. This thing, not just to reach with the feelings and the tentacles, so they sense each other, so they don't have to turn their heads and look, so they know where their co-actors or their colleagues is on stage, but they have a great sense of them, right, Pri? Yeah. So, so this thing about sensing them strongly.
And say in Hamlet, for instance, you've got a lot of soliloquies. You talked about to be or not to be. That is the question. How does it translate in with that same tenacity in the Danish language as well, or do you lose some of the nuances?
Okay, maybe there is a little flip with the yeah. That's true. English is better. Yeah.
English is better.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Okay.
But English is also a more rich language than Danish is.
Okay. So
more precise. They have more
words.
Yeah, nuanced words for for things.
But I think that there are words.
But we have Hygge, of course.
Yeah, you have, and there's another word that I learned, and I say this to a lot of people. It's called jobjoy, Arbejdsglæde.
Wow, Arbejdsglæde. Yeah.
That is a very beautiful word, and I don't think you quite have the English rendition to it. It's something more or less of satisfaction with the job that you're doing.
Job satisfaction, yeah.
But
we also have another one, skaberglæde, creation joy.
Okay.
And we also have the virkelyst, the eager to be in life, to be eager to participate, to be eager to contribute to others.
Okay, that's wonderful. So it's a pity that most of these words are not there, or these concepts are not really there in Shakespeare's plays. Maybe then we would have seen a few glories of the Danish language as well.
But apparently he was never to Denmark.
I also hear that in the theatre business you have a lot of superstitions. Is that true? Superstitions. For example, it's been said that they don't really name the play Macbeth by Shakespeare. They call it the Scottish play.
I'm not aware of that.
You're not aware of that. Well, there are a few superstitions. And did you see the event when Chris Rock was slapped by Will Smith in the Academy Awards?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, you did. And one of the theatre critics of England was ready to point out that Chris Rock had congratulated Denzel Washington on having a good play by Macbeth.
Oh.
And he said, look, you get slapped if you say the word Macbeth. You've got to say... And it's also said that, I don't know how much of this is true, but it's often said that in theatre, a ghost light is always left on because they believe that ghosts are meandering around theatre.
Yeah, and the big theatres and in every great castle or in Denmark have a monastery, have a ghost. And yeah.
In some of the theatres in England, they have 2 seats that are reserved just so that the ghosts can watch. I thought that it was out of proportions.
But believing is a big part of theatre, right?
Yeah. It is.
And make it bigger than what we just see.
One of the things that I saw your students do is try to act like objects, or try to give feelings to objects sometimes. Someone was portraying what a hen might look like, or what he or she would feel that a hen is doing. Is this something regular in theatre, or is this a modern phenomenon?
No, it's also how you get inspired to bring life to stage, and this is the education of Shakespeare and the Commedia School, that we are trying to observe life and bring that to stage. So yes, we will study animals, we will study rooster, and we will study monkeys, that we did. But then later on, we will try to humanize it, because then the monkey at the cafe. We studied monkeys, and then we slowly took 10% human, 50% human, and in the end there was only 5% monkey and
90%
human, and then they had to go to cafe. But you still saw this, like how they would take something from each other and run to the corner. How can you be inspired? Or if you are walking like a horse, maybe it's with more pride you come into a room, or like a rooster, these they're showing off. Yeah.
So is this a technique that has been used by? I want to phrase it again. Have the Nepalese students also tried this before, or is this something new that you introduced in Europe?
I like now. Uberaj Gimre that had invited me to sit to give this workshop at Shilpi Theatre, and he had done Commedia School, so he was in Denmark for 2 years, so he knows it, and that's probably why he also had the style and the way we teach. That's probably also why he have invited us. I will look at Preem and say, I guess that it's not normal. Here. It's not how they, like you said yourself, they think they are going to stand up and most of the actors and do Bollywood or Hollywood, not study being kitchen objects or being elements or monkeys or whatever we.
Yeah, I also think that most of it has got to do because the Nepalese literature hasn't been written in that way. Say, for example, it's most of the time it's been written in contemporary issues. For example, poverty, for example, sexual violence. Things like these have been written down, but no poet or no story writer has thought about how an object might feel or try to humanize the objects. For example, if you take a look at the poetry of Alice Oswald, she is the professor of poetry at Oxford.
Okay.
And she has this wonderful book which came up about 3 or 4 years ago. It's known as Falling Awake. And she tries to imagine how a firefly would feel like when it's getting burned, for example, or what the emotions of a droplet of water is like. So we've seen poets or writers in the West do that, but I don't think that it's quite trickled into Nepalese literature as yet. And maybe that is one of the reasons why.
I don't know, but actually there is several. I'm more familiar with Indian writers, and I'm sorry I don't know all the names, but
it's okay.
Yes, I do know Salman Rushdie and but there was, I think it's called All Small Things God by
God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy.
Yeah, and actually she's starting one of her novels, like she's saying, and the Christian came to Kerala like a tea bag in water, and then you get the picture, right? It's just. Everybody knows how the tea bag get into the water, and then the tea is just going out.
Yeah.
And this kind of poetry in observing the world, seeing how the wind is taking the leaves, or seeing how paper is, if you squeeze it together, how it tries to get out in its shape. This you can be inspired to use in a play, how we are trying to reshape ourselves, whatever we have been crushed, we try to get out. And we might never look the same. And if somebody crushes, we'll probably get across the same places. Yeah.
So sometimes I observed last time around that when you're in Shilpi, acting came quite naturally to you. It never felt like you were trying to do it. It just felt like acting, and you were whole. If you know what I mean. Sometimes it feels like some actors are trying to put on a performance, and there are other actors who are not trying to put on a performance, but they themselves are in some ways the performance. So is this something that you had a taste for in your early days?
I've always loved moving. I've been very loved. Like when I was a small child, I could watch ballet for hours. This thing that expressing yourself tremendously. So it drew me very strongly, and also the playfulness. But this style, like Commedia School and like a Shakespeare, it's almost like it's a way of being in life, that you reach a state where you in play and take everything, especially. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so it must have been, I was talking to a few students the other day, and they were quite amazed by the body of work that you've put in. They said that despite the fact that you've got children and you've got a lot of responsibilities back home, you're still doing it with a lot of passion, and it shows. And how difficult is it to manage, perhaps, a married life and the theatre? Because most of the artists in our country, and you said this yourself, we don't really have a lot of budget, much smaller than yours. And most of the artists have a lot of difficulty keeping up with their artistic life after they've got married. So is this some?
I would really not like trying to be clever on behalf of the Nepali society, but yes, when once you get children, you get a larger responsibility. But at least for me, before I could waste a lot of time. I got much more focused. Like now, the boy is sleeping. I've got 1 hour. Let's go for it. Let's go reading this story. Let's go trying to explore this character. Let's go on stage when we had him in the prom. And then you also have to choose a good partner to have children with, because if it's a fight about who is going to take over, you have to give and serve. And also sometimes you're being served. So me and my partner, my husband Ravi, who's actually half Indian, we have supported each other.
And this is a very good thing. I mean, it was wonderful to hear of this story, because the perception of general Nepalese is that if there's a European or if there's an American, he or she gets divorced. The next day they get married. This is what people here think. So whenever people hear of a good marriage in Europe, they say that's impossible. They're just going to divorce in the first thing possible. So it was wonderful to know that despite being married for so long, you still have that, the two of you still have that thing going on.
We've been married for 22 years, and he's home taking care of our kids. And he's giving me the freedom to take this adventure. And yes, it's harder work for him back home. But I've also given him the space. Like he chose to take a job in Sri Lanka, so we actually moved to Sri Lanka. I was there for 3 years, where I was like taking care of the kids, but of course I was also doing theatre.
So in the 3 years that you were in Sri Lanka, maybe you observed a lot of plays of the Asian style rather than the European.
As you say, there is not so many. There's not so many theatres. It's more the classical theatre. Then you see the dance, the Kathak, Bharatanatyam.
Yeah, Bharatanatyam.
The dances. That is where the theatre is carried out.
It's there is a wonderful story about how the theatre was created in the Asian subcontinent. It's been said that we have the foundational texts of the Hindu culture, which is known as Vedas. Do you know about the Vedas? Rig Veda, Atharvaveda?
No,
not really. So a parallel of this would be the Old Testament and the New Testament in the Christian society. In the Hinduistic tradition, we've got something that's known as the Vedas. So a very good Hindu scholar would know Vedas in the same way that a Christian scholar would know about the Old and the New Testament. One of the gods, Indra, after the creation of the universe, went to the creator, which is Brahma, and said, look, we've created the universe, we've given the people a blueprint of how to live with the Vedas. Now we need something for fun. And what Brahma did is took one element from each of the Vedas. So one of them was mimicry, one of them was song, one of them was dance, and put it all together and gave us a fifth Veda, which is known as theatre. That's how it's generally described.
Yeah.
And now that in Europe, for example, you have religions dying out, people don't really go to the churches. I talk to a lot of my friends who are in Italy or France or the United Kingdom, for example, they don't really have a strong penchant for going to churches and all. Is this a phenomenon true in Denmark as well?
Yes, it is. And I think this phenomenon also come true when you are not faced to poverty, and that you know that you are. Yeah, I think it's also, how can I say it? When you live in a more rich country, you know, and you know that you can work hard, you know, you don't thank somebody higher. You thank your neighbors or your friends for helping you, or you thank yourself. So I think the religion, maybe in Nepal, they are much more. How should I don't know how to say it nicely in English. They are much more in the hands of nature, that they know that there is something bigger than them, that is a power in their life.
Well, one of the things about the Nepalese culture, and in this way I disagree with a lot of my Christian friends, is that for us everything is a realization of God. So there is no, say, for example, when I think of the Christian God, you have this perception of a white man with a beard sitting in the sky with a big throne. He's going to judge you after your death. These are the perceptions that have been given. But in our culture, for example, everything is a realization of God. So a cup of coffee would also be God. A plant would also be God. Dust, stone, water, everything is a realization of God's. And I think that in that way we are very much one with nature compared to the Western countries.
Precisely.
And when you went to the religious places, and have you been to a few religious places in our country?
Yes, I have.
You've been to Bodh, for example?
Yeah, I've been to the old part of Kathmandu, and there was some places I couldn't go, and I also went to the temple near Shilpi Theatre on a Saturday, where there was a big. I saw some of the cremation fires, and yeah.
Oh, okay, so she saw the crematorium in Pashupatinath. Is that true? Some of them are really taken aback when they see a person being burned. In the cremation ceremony. So is a cremation ceremony there in Denmark as well, or is this very, very new to you?
To see it, like the body on the fire getting lit, of course it's wrapped in something. It's not like that's something that I'm totally not used to. And everybody's sitting and watching, and it's going into the flood. It's quite overwhelming. In Denmark there is cremation as always, but it's like you see the casket, and then it's pushed, or it's rolling into a fire.
Okay.
And then you can go outside and you can see the smoke in the chimney, and then people get the ashes in
a small
what's
pot or cup. I don't know what's it called either. So I see this romanticization of being cremated and the ashes being thrown in a certain place.
You have to go to the bridge and you have to put your ashes everywhere. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But you probably think you already are there. Like you don't need to put the ashes. It's just you become.
Yeah, the oneness.
Part of the universe.
Yeah, I mean, but with more and more Western thought coming in our ways, I mean, if you take a look at the Nepalese society, the percentage of Christians that are here are growing every day. Most of them has got to do with missionary work. If you go to the villages, you see a lot of poor people being paid to become Christians.
Oh.
Yes.
But religion have done that, like paying people, like putting a knife on their throat to make them convert into their religion.
Yeah, I think that the phrase by Arundhati Roy, a Christian comes to Calcutta spreading a tea, is something that she must have observed as well. Because when I go to my villages, for example, or in the rural parts of our country, we see a lot of fabric of the traditional Hindu way of living is being gone. So people don't tend to go to places of worship of the other religion as well. That is quite a phenomenon. If you take a look at the Hindu tradition, it's so rich. True Hindu, it said that the true Hindus think of Christ as a Messiah. They really do.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't really think of him as the only Messiah. They think of him as a God in the way that any other person is a manifestation of the divine God. So Christ might be a savior, but so are you, or so is Santosh or Prem or anyone for that instance. So that idea is pretty appealing to me sometimes.
Like you like your religion. You're getting more religious.
No, I'm not getting religious. I just said that I like the idea that everybody can play God sometimes in our culture.
Yeah.
And
but I also see that the way we are each other's angels.
Mm-hmm, wow.
Know? And when we feel lost, or when we pray, or whatever whom we're praying to,
Mm-hmm,
or if we're just whispering as an atheist help, it's each other, and it's the cup of tea they're smelling in a magnificent way that could bring us.
Yeah. Talking about God, I also read somewhere that it's in the Islamic countries, since God is not being allowed to depict in pictures, they don't really have a sophisticated way of the theatre, for example, because you can't depict something into an art form.
Mm-hmm.
So in your travels, has this really been true, or is this just an off-the-cuff remark? Because you've seen play performed in Europe, you've seen play performed in Sri Lanka, for example.
I've also seen play performed in the Arabic countries,
Ah.
but it's not like I think they have a rich culture as well, a theatre tradition as well.
Mm-hmm.
They might not personalize their God,
their deity,
but there's many other things in life that also can, and they can also comment on the society and on the leaders and the lack of corruption and everything that is influencing the everyday life of people. And that's the power of theatre. It can bring the topic and the voice of the people up.
Yeah, but sometimes a criticism is also labeled upon theatre performers that sometimes you want an act to be played in a certain way. So you don't really give the artist the creative freedom to express his own words. You want him to sound a certain way. Perhaps when you're playing Hamlet, you want him to be a certain way or rehearse the dialogues in a certain way. And sometimes the artistic freedom is not really given to actors. Is that true in some schools?
Yes, that's true in every, like I guess also in any Hollywood film, it has to be a commercial success. So, like when we take a job, how much freedom do we have? Do we just have to do as we are told? Then we have to trust the person that is in charge, the director or the metteur en scène, whether that person can communicate and have good visions for the play.
And so now you're here for only 2 or 3 days more in our country.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes.
So how has been the 1 month that you've spent in our country in terms of teaching students how to perform better? How have students of our country been in comparison to the ones you've taught in Commedia School? Perhaps comparison is not really the right thing to do, maybe.
But these students have chose to be at Shilpi Theatre, so they have already taken a big step in their life. They're just not somebody we take from the street. They are brave and have said to their families, this is what I want. And I guess that it's not something that their families, they are hoping, they become a doctor, become a lawyer, And So it's really, it's very dedicated students.
Mm-hmm.
And beside their studies, they are also, at the Shilpi, they also have to go to college.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like, their family will not support them. Or this is the pressure on them.
Yeah.
Plus, they have to work also at the theatre to give a little bit back because they get a free education. So they are very hard and determined students, and I've been very impressed. And I can see a great progression. But I actually think you should invite Prem also.
Prem. Prem, it's been about 10 months that you've been at Shilpi. So we were hoping that we could do one with Songita. Maybe.
Yeah.
Because she's been here for about, 8 to 10 years already in the theatre. So maybe she has a treasure trove of stories to share. So we're hoping that we could call her over.
Yeah.
So after you go to Denmark, are you planning to return anytime soon to this little nation?
Let's put it that way. I've got a big heart for Asia. I'm married to half Indian. I have been living in Sri Lanka for 3 years.
3 years.
I've actually also been living in Bangladesh for 2 years.
Oh my goodness.
I'm married in Bangladesh. And now, like, Uberesh and I have made this collaboration between Shilpi and Commedia School, and of course we want to continue this. And I want to see how the seed that we have given into this soil of the students, how it will grow. So hopefully we will have a bigger collaboration, because a bridge has to be walked upon. So we are so lucky that we will actually have one student coming
from Denmark
back to with us to Denmark. So we have a student called Probitra. I can't say her last name. It's not because it's a secret. Pronounce it. And she's got a visa, so she would start her studies in Denmark at Commedia School, just like Uberesh did nearly 10 years ago.
So is this going to be for a few months or 2 years as Uberesh?
We will hope it will be for two years. But the Danish immigration have gone very difficult the last couple of years. So even though that we actually had an agreement to get student visa for 40 years, then we had a right-wing government, and like a snap of the finger, she took away the possibility for us to have a 2 years visa without asking which cost it would be to our old institution, and without even asking the theatre community what kind of impact Commedia School have had on the theatre in Denmark, but actually in the whole world. You can see here now we have Shilpi Theatre that have been created by Uberesh. Denmark should be proud. They should invest more like money in students that could come and have the education and travel back and be great theatre creators with visions and strong tools to follow their dreams.
So you're going to be back anytime soon in our country?
There is no concrete plan.
There's no concrete plan.
No.
We hope that you're back, so that after maybe, 6 months or 1 year, we could do another podcast with you. It was wonderful talking to you.
The next plan is that Probitra will come to Denmark, and then we'll probably also invite Uberesh, and then maybe another teacher, or maybe I come again. Let's see. There's many possibilities.
Yeah, I hope that you come again so that we get to meet you again.
Yeah.
It was wonderful talking to you.
Thank you.